Okay, just in case you were wondering, and I don't think you have been wondering, but the asylum has not been built and the inmates are still running amok on the streets of America. Hit it, Corinne.
So I'll first say, and you've heard me say this many times, and the president as well, we've been very clear from the beginning that what we saw on January 6th was the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And the president has been very clear. Our democracy continues and remains under threat, and we all have a part to protect it. The committee has been doing important bipartisan work to get to the truth of what happened on that very day, so we can make sure that that doesn't happen again. So,
first of all, where does this idea come from on the left and the right that democracy is something worth supporting, defending, and protecting? Democracy, in the words of some of the founding fathers, is nothing more than two wolves and a lamb deciding on what to have for dinner. Democracy is rule by the majority, and that's not something that you want to be ruled by, because the majority, historically speaking, is almost always, if not always, wrong. You don't want to be ruled by the stupid, dumb arse majority. But she says what we saw on January 6th was the worst attack on our democracy. Now let's just give them an inch here. And let's just say democracy is synonymous with freedom, because I think that's what they're trying to convey, even though how it fleshes itself out is this democracy is a form of tyranny. It's a form of government growth and control. So let's just say democracy is freedom. So what we saw on January 6th was the worst attack on our freedom since the Civil War back in the 1860s. Our democracy continues and remains under threat. So the worst attack on our democracy. Now, I'll give you a couple seconds here, and that's probably all you need, although it's probably already popped into your mind on something far worse than what happened on January 6th, which a lot of people would equate to just a simple frat party complete with selfies, broken lecterns, stolen lecterns, and people propping their feet up on the desks of psychopathic tyrants, parasitic tyrants. But you've probably already got in your mind maybe Pearl Harbor could have been a little bit worse. Maybe thousands of people dying on September 1st or September 11th, 2001. A couple of things that I thought about was the worst attack on our freedoms. Forget about democracy. One of the worst attacks came on July 26, 1908. That is when the Federal Bureau of Investigations came online. One of the biggest domestic terror cells outside of the CIA and the IRS is the FBI, followed by the CIA in September 18th of 1947. I would say that that is one of the worst, or those two things are a couple of the worst things that ever happened to our democracy. And January 6th pales in comparison to every single one of these examples that I'm giving you. So you got the FBI in 1908, and in 1947, you got the CIA. And then in July 1st, 1972, interestingly enough, right after Nixon declared not a war on drugs, but a war on people, July 1st, 1972, you got the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives coming online. That's the worst threat to our freedoms. Forget about democracy, because maybe it's time for us to consider that maybe democracy should be under threat. Maybe that's valid to say, hey, two wolves and a lamb deciding on what to have for dinner is not acceptable in our society because it's predicated on gross immorality, the gross immorality of the unthinking majority or the masses. Another thing I came up with was the drug war, which is not a war on drugs, it's a war on people. The war on drugs is a euphemism to enact the war on people. And what's the war on people? Take away their rights, take away their freedoms, and strip them of more of their wealth while the government continues to grow and grow and grow and become more powerful. So in 1971, this right here is Nixon closing the gold window. But in that same year, on August 15th, 1971, when he closed the gold window and decoupled sound money with the fiat currency that we currently have, he also enacted the drug war. So you have August 10th, 1964, which was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where North Vietnamese torpedo boats supposedly fired on the USS Maddox, which was the event that got us embroiled in the long and costly and failed and immoral Vietnam War. And then they created the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. And then for 10 years, more than 10 years, U.S. troops were getting slaughtered on foreign soil to the tune of about 59,000. You can go to the Vietnam War Memorial over there in Washington's District of Criminals if you want to take a look at all the names on those granite stones. And then you got December 7th, 1941, Corinne, Jean-Pierre. I like some of these. Look at this right here. Just horrible. Yeah, there's some. Got some memes over here. When things come into clear resolution, you kind of, things start taking shape. It's just amazing that anybody would utter these words right here. It's almost like if you were going to use a religious term, the people who went through what they went through on September 11th, 2001 would look at this as, what the frick are you talking about? The people who have relatives who were in Pearl Harbor that day and watched the bombs fall and watched the place get engulfed by fire, what the heck are you talking about? The soldiers who had to go to Vietnam because of that Gulf of Tonkin lie, even Lyndon Baines Johnson said back then that, hey, we don't even know if they were firing on, North Vietnamese torpedo boats. For all we know, they were shooting at whales. They knew they were lying, but they also knew that if we ramp up the war machine, if we inject a little bit of fear in the American people, we can extract more wealth from them, take their sons from them, throw them into a banker war, because that's what it is, because that's what it always is. Extract that wealth, beef up the military industrial complex, and then have the fake stream media of that time lay a little bit of cover for us so they can become the propaganda arm of the military industrial complex. Yeah, I can think of some more things that top the list of January 6th. On the top of Joe Biden's list, on the top of the press secretary's list is January 6th, on the very top. It's just amazing. And then, of course, you have, like we already mentioned, in June 1971, President Nixon declared a war on people. He dramatically increased the size and presence of federal drug control agencies. That means when the government gets bigger, when more laws are made, more money is needed, and the people lose their rights, and they lose their power, and they lose their wealth. And the value of the dollar begins to diminish. And push through measures such as mandatory sentencing and no-knock warrants in violation of the Fourth Amendment right to be secure in your person's houses, papers, and effects. And of course, September 11th, 2001 at 7:14 a.m., something far more horrific than January 6th, Corinne. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Probably, I would say most Americans don't know this. We could go out on the street with a microphone and we can see if they know if the United States government under FDR ever made gold illegal to own. And yes, he did, with an executive order 6102 on April 5th, 1933. This is a far greater threat to democracy, freedom, than anything that could possibly or did happen on January 6th. And then just last but not least, the most horrific of all, because when you control the money, you don't care who makes the laws. You don't care who crafts the legislation. You don't care what judges are sitting on the seat of the Supreme Court. You don't care who's behind the desk resolute at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If you control the money, you control the time and laboring energies of every single American. And that's when the Federal Reserve came online. And that's exactly what they did. They created the fiat currency Ponzi scheme system that now controls the issuance and the value of your currency, which means they control the value of your labor and your time. And I would say those things, and that's just, I'm sure, just the tip of the iceberg. Those are just things that came to my mind when I was listening to this clown speak behind the podium for the President of the United States. Leave your thoughts about this. This is truly infuriating, guys. And that anybody, and I'm talking to you Democrats, because I know Republicans see this and all this kind of stuff, and I'm not playing into the left versus right dog and pony paradigm show, but especially Democrats who applaud this person right here, and she can do and say no wrong. Get your heads out of your you-know-whats and realize that this is absolutely, objectively, provably false by any measure. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my private email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, buy me a coffee, subscribe star, Cash App, or grab a hard-hitting conversation starting design from the store. I'll see you guys in the next heavily censored shadow ban video.